You can't just operate a ranch in a residential area. I'll have it shut down within the week." That shrill voice was the first real memory I have of Karen. Not a neighborly hello. Not a polite introduction, just that dramatic declaration. Spit through clenched teeth as she stood on the edge of our property with a clipboard. And judgment in her eyes. It was a Tuesday, I think. Hot, dry. The kind of heat that makes your boots stick to the dirt. I was out by the east fence, replacing some old boards and shooing our goats away from the tool bucket. I looked up when I heard tires crunching gravel and saw her silver SUV come to an aggressive stop. The driver's door swung open and out stepped a woman dressed like she was going to a garden party. Not a working ranch. Her heels immediately sank into the soil. But she didn't let that stop her from storming over like she was the sheriff in a town. Only she cared about, "Excuse me," she shouted before she was even 10 feet from the property line. "Are you the one responsible for this mess?" I raised an eyebrow and dusted my hands off on my jeans. "Well, if by mess you mean the family ranch, then yeah, that'd be me." She wrinkled her nose like she'd just walked into a cow pie, which, given her proximity to our herd, wasn't unlikely. "I'm Karen Martin," she said, as if the name alone should make me stand at attention. "President of the HOA for Oak Valley Estates. We're right over there." She gestured vaguely in the direction of the gated community that had popped up in the last 10 years. A glossy slice of suburbia built on land that used to grow wildflowers. I didn't say anything, just waited. Sometimes silence does more damage than words. Karen didn't like the silence. I've received multiple complaints from our residents. The noise, the smell, the unsightly structures on this property, she said, motioning toward our weathered barn that had stood there since the 1950s. I couldn't help it, I chuckled. "Ma'am, this barn was here before your HOA ever dreamed of existing." "That may be," she said, bristling, "but we have regulations now, and ordinances. This isn't the Wild West anymore." I wanted to say that, for some of us it still kind of was. She took a step closer, balancing carefully to avoid the muddy patch near the trough. "This is a residential area now. That means rules. You can't just run a full livestock operation within earshot of suburban families." I folded my arms. "The county says different. We've got permits going back generations. Grandfathered zoning, agricultural rights." Karen waved that off like it was a fly. "We'll see what the county says when they hear how disruptive you've become. Roosters crowing at dawn, cows lowing all day, tractors running at all hours. It's I nuisance *. At this point, my dog Duke trotted up, tail wagging, tongue lolling. He gave Karen a friendly sniff, and she recoiled like he was radioactive. "Keep that animal away from me," she barked. "I'll have animal control out here if he touches me." I gave Duke a scratch behind the ears and told him he was a good boy, which only seemed to further annoy her. The thing is, Karen didn't know me. She assumed I was just some ranch hand, some worker she could intimidate, and that was fine by me. I didn't correct her. I didn't offer my name. I let her believe whatever she needed to believe to fuel her superiority. What she didn't know was that I'd inherited this ranch 6 months ago when my granddad passed. Not just the land, but the LLC that owned it, the business license, the water rights, the equipment leases, everything. I'd quietly updated all the records at the courthouse, filed the paperwork, paid the taxes, took over the responsibilities. The old man raised me here, taught me how to fix a tractor before I could drive one. His passing was hard, but taking over the ranch was never a question, it was a promise. So Karen thinking I was just some hired hand, that was a gift. It gave me time to see what kind of enemy I was dealing with. And she didn't disappoint. In the following weeks, Karen made our ranch her personal obsession. She showed up regularly, snapping photos like she was building a case for trial. One day she stood on top of an old hay bale to get a better view of our chicken coop, only to lose her balance and fall back into a shallow pit filled with manure and straw. She screeched like she'd been shot and demanded we pay for her dry cleaning. I suggested she maybe keep off things she wasn't built to stand on. Another time she parked her car in the middle of our access road and blocked our hay delivery. When I asked her to move, she said, "This isn't your road, It's public. I had to pull out a laminated copy of the deed showing the private easement. Just to get her to leave, she began flooding the HOA board with complaints, then brought in a county inspector, some guy who looked as uncomfortable being here as she did. I'd already met with the county months prior. They'd approved our permits, signed off on our operations. The inspector looked around, asked a few polite questions, then left after 5 minutes. Karen was furious. I could see it in her eyes. She thought she was battling some outdated old-timer who didn't know the law. She thought she'd catch us with violations, force us to shut down, bulldoze the barn, maybe even try to buy the land out from under us once she'd made it worthless. What she didn't know was that I'd gone to school for this, studied agribusiness and law. I knew the game, knew how to protect what was ours. I was just waiting for her to make her move, and she did. One hot Thursday, I looked up from feeding the horses and saw Karen marching toward the ranch house, flanked by 3 men in suits. One carried a briefcase, the other 2 were already sweating through their collars. She had the same smug little smirk on her face that told me this was the moment. She thought she'd won. I dusted off my gloves, straightened my back, and walked toward the gate. She waved a stack of papers in the air like she was presenting a royal decree. As of today, the HOA is filing formal legal action to shut this ranch down for code violations and public nuisance. I smiled and nodded politely. She had no idea what was coming. Karen stood there like she'd just served the final blow in a heavyweight title match. Her arms crossed, chin high, sunglasses practically sparkling with satisfaction. Behind her, the 3 men in suits fidgeted awkwardly in the summer heat, clearly not thrilled to be dragged out to the middle of cattle country on a Thursday afternoon. One of them, a lean guy with a briefcase and sweat soaking through his armpits, stepped forward and cleared his throat like he was about to read scripture. "Mister," he said, looking at me uncertainly. I let him hang in the silence for a second before I replied, "Cole, just Cole." Karen scoffed behind him, muttering something under her breath about farm hands with attitude. The lawyer nodded stiffly. "Mr. Cole, we're here representing the Oak Valley Homeowners Association, per Section 1B of the HOA Charter and related municipal codes. Operations conducted on this property may be in violation of residential and community zoning ordinances. As such, we're here to serve you with formal notice of non-compliance and intent to seek an injunction." He offered the manila envelope like it was a sacred document, but I didn't take it right away. Instead, I gave him a calm smile and gestured toward the porch. "Before we start waving papers around, why don't you all come sit in the shade? Might keep those suits from turning into sweat rags." Karen's nostrils flared. "We won't be here long enough to sit. This is a formality. Within 30 days, you'll be ordered to cease operations or face fines and removal, right?" I said casually. "Well, if we're being formal, then I have something for you too." I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a folder I'd been carrying around for weeks just in case. It was a little dusty from riding around in my truck, but the documents inside were pristine. Laminated copies of everything that mattered. My grandfather's original land deeds from the 1940s. The current LLC registration with my asterisk name on it. Business permits, tax filings, zoning certifications, and just to top it off, a letter from my lawyer addressed specifically to the Oak Valley Homeowners Association and any affiliated parties. I handed it to the lead lawyer. "Start with the deed," I said. "It'll clear up most of your confusion." The man opened the folder and flipped through the documents. His expression changed as he read, first skepticism, then surprise, and finally discomfort. Karen craned her neck, trying to see what he was looking at, but he didn't offer her a peek. "Everything you see here," I continued, "is perfectly legal. This ranch has been operating for over 70 years. We're outside HOA jurisdiction, zoned for agricultural use, and protected under the county's grandfather clause. There's no ordinance you can cite that overrides that. I own the land. I own the LLC. Every cow, chicken, fence post, and puddle of mud is mine." Karen finally stepped forward, grabbing the envelope from the lawyer and flipping through it herself. "This can't be right. That land was supposed to be up for sale." I spoke to the county board last month. They said the owner passed away. He did, I said softly. My grandfather. And he left it all to me. She stared at me, eyes wide. You're the no. That's not possible. You look like some worker. I almost laughed. Thanks for that. Karen spun on the lawyer. This doesn't change anything. You said we had a case, you said. The lawyer held up a hand, clearing his throat again. Ms. Martin, the documentation Mr. Cole has provided appears thorough. If the property is legally zoned for agricultural use and falls outside of HOA boundaries, then I'm afraid the HOA has no legal authority to impose restrictions. She looked like she'd been slapped with a shovel. I wasn't done, though. I should also let you know, I said, reaching back into my folder. This letter here is a cease and desist. You've been trespassing on private property multiple times, harassing workers and disrupting operations. If you set foot on this land again without permission, you'll be dealing with the county sheriff, not a board HOA committee. Karen's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. The smug confidence that had carried her onto my land had completely drained from her face. Even the sunglasses couldn't hide how red her cheeks had turned. Her hands shook as she clutched the useless legal documents she'd been so proud of. I suggest, I added, that you spend less time driving around with lawyers and more time reading your own HOA charter. Oak Valley was built on land *next*, to mine, not *on mine. You want to manage lawns and complain about paint colors? That's your business. But this ranch, this land, it's *mine*, and it always will be. There was a long silence. Finally, one of the other lawyers muttered something about needing to call his office, and they all started awkwardly backing toward their vehicle. Karen stood frozen for a second longer, staring at the ground like she was trying to make the earth swallow her whole. Then she turned and stormed off, heels sinking into the mud as she went. I watched as she climbed into her shiny SUV, slammed the door, and hit the gas so hard that her wheels spun in the dirt. The tires slid into a rut, the same one she'd driven through last week. When she came by to complain about our dust clouds, she gunned the engine again, but only succeeded in splashing her door with muddy water. I took a deep breath and turned back to the barn. The sun was still high. Horses needed water. The goats were eyeing the hay bales again. Life went on. Word spread fast. The HOA backed off. No more letters, no more surprise visits. Karen, I heard, took a break from her HOA duties, and her SUV wasn't seen near our road again. Some of the Oak Valley folks even came by later that month to buy eggs, honey, and fresh milk. Turns out, not everyone hates living next to a working ranch. Every now and then, I'd see her from a distance, standing stiffly by her mailbox while I drove past in my truck. We didn't wave, didn't need to, because people like Karen believe rules and status give them power. They think they can control land with paperwork and fancy shoes. But out here, it doesn't work that way. Out here, the land listens to one thing * ownership *. And I don't care how many lawyers she brings, or how many board meetings she holds. That land isn't hers. It's mine. And it always will be.